In today's video, we're going to see how we can look up one value on one sheet to another sheet using the find method in VBA. So in sheet 2 here in the lookup tab, we have a couple names that we want to look up, and we want to look it up in this large data set. So the way we're going to do this is we are going to go into the code as a standard. So I have this in the module. I do not put this in the sheet. I find that sometimes you might have a macro that will delete the sheet. If you delete the sheet, it will delete the code. You may be just tired of this data. You may just manually delete it. You'll lose your code. If you put it in a module, you're much less likely to lose it. I always add a save method onto my macros or onto my VBA, so that way when I'm stepping through my code, it's saving it every single time. What's important about that is you need to make sure that you're saving this as a workbook that's macro enabled. In older versions, 2016, 365 before, it will just say .xlsm. Here in 2019, it will say Excel macro enabled workbook. So you want to make sure you save it as that method. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to save the code and keep the code if you close this workbook. So as part of this, I know that I want to look up a range. So I've set the variable here already. I always set the beginning of the variable to equal what the data format is. I find that's easier when you're looking at the code later. Is this an integer? And is this a long? Is this a range? What is this? So this makes it a lot easier for you code. So I have written here the method to look up a value. So we're going to do a straight lookup here. This obviously, you may be using this more in a loop kind of setting. You may not be using this as a true one-time lookup, but it can happen, and that's how I'm going to display it today. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the range. So for this workbook, we're going to look in this data tab, and we're going to look in columns A through Z. You can limit the columns, you can limit the rows, you can do a range, or you can do the entire sheet if you want. We're going to find, and we're going to look up this value here. So this is actually, we want to look up 2, 1, which is row 2, column 1 dot value. And then we're going to look it up for the whole. So we want to match the entire cell's value with this Rawlison Plastics Limited when we do this lookup. So I'm going to add a pause to the code, and we're going to step through the code. So save the workbook, and it's now run through this. So we didn't get an error. If I hover over it, you can see it says Rawlison Plastic Ltd, but I'm going to actually add this to a watch, so add to watch. You can see here it's returning the value Rawlison Plastics Ltd, which is what we expected. But if I just take this expression and put .address, I can also get the address. So one of the nice things about the watch window is you can actually expand this, and then you can look up different things. So maybe I want to look up what the length of it is, what the width of it is. It could be any value that you want to look up. It's going to typically return the value of that. That's why, or the text. So you can see that's why values come back with that value. But if I wanted for some reason to return the width, I could. So this is now looking up this value. It's returning multiple things. I can either use the address, or I can say something like if range lookup is nothing, then, whoops, sorry, we do message box not found, and if. So now if I step through this code, because this value was found, it's going to not give a message. So now if we want to look up Sutton, so we're going to change this from 2 to 3. So we're going to step through this again, and you're going to find that this is returning Sutton because it's found the entire value. So if we were just to do Sutton, and we were to do match entire cells, that is where it's coming from. Now, if I wanted to search for Sutton in column D, where it's not going to match, there is a Sutton agency, but there's no word Sutton. So let's go ahead and change that. So we're just going to look in column D now. So we're going to change from AZ to DD, and we're going to step through this. And you're going to notice right away that this comes up as nothing because it was not found, and it's telling us that it was not found. And that's because we've got this set, the XL whole on the look at. So if I change this to XL part, now when I step through this, still in column D, it's actually found it. It's found Sutton Agency. It found that in that cell D3, and that's now being returned. So the find works the same way that you would find in the worksheet. So if I do Control F here and I do Toro, I match the entire cells. I find this is exactly what the find is doing. It is finding the first value and it is returning it to you. It is not finding all of the values. Often I'll use different methodologies for that if I know that data is repeated, but I still want to return that cell or that value. I will use different methodologies. So you could use a count if statement, or you can loop through. So you can say, count the number of times it occurs in a column, count the number of times it occurs in a row, depending on how you want to look that up. But it is important to recognize that this find is working just like the Control F does. It is just finding the first value of that. It is not going to return every single value. It's going to find the first one and return the information for that. A couple other tips on using the dot find methodology in VBA. There are a couple other parameters that you can set within the lookup that can help. So one is called look in. So this is where sort of similar. So the way that this works is it's very similar to when you do Control F. So do you want to look within this one? Look within formulas, values, comments. How do you want to look that up? I got to say I don't use this a lot, but it is available. So you can use, XL values if you don't want to look at formulas. Maybe you're looking up an integer or a small number and you don't want to look at the formulas, just want to look at the values. That's available. Another one that I see often used is match case. So you'll do match case equals either true or false. And again, very similar to Control F. You've got match case here, and you're setting that as true or as false. So you can also search within rows, columns. I don't use search often when I am searching for things. I just, whatever the default is, but it can be important sometimes if you need to make sure that you're searching columns or rows first. And then within, I'm usually calling out a range on my finds, especially in VBA, so I'm not using workbook, I'm just using sheet, so I just don't even set it. But it is very similar to how those values are used in there, and you can set all of those within the VBA code to return more exact information out of this dot find. Thank you for joining me for this video today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, add a comment. I'm always interested in hearing what other people think. I understand that there are many ways to use different functionality within Excel. This is just one of many different ways, but would love to hear others' comments on how they've utilized this functionality as well.